Beyond the gates, spoilers tease that Madison actually has a cruel father lurking in the shadows of her hometown, his presence a silent threat that colors every street corner with unease. Rumors swirl in hushed tones among the townsfolk that Vernon, the stern and imperious patriarch, is more than just a distant relative. He is Madison's biological sire. No official records acknowledge the fact, of course. Officially, Madison is the product of a secretive affair, a hidden truth buried beneath layers of lies and social propriety. But those who pay attention to the slight tightening of Madison's jaw when Vernon's name is spoken know that the connection is real, and that it binds her to a man both powerful and ruthless. Long ago, Vernon had taken no responsibility for the child born of his dalliance with an itinerant dancer whose name has been lost to time. That dancer, luminous, vivacious, and fleeting, disappeared back into the folds of the world as soon as her pregnancy became apparent, leaving Madison to be shuttled between foster homes, then finally adopted by loving but oblivious parents who never knew her true lineage. Anita Dupree, Vernon's lawful wife, kept her daughter Nicole close, parading her as the legitimate child of the Dupree name. Danny Dupree, born just 2 years later, inherited the family wealth and the privileges it conferred. Madison, quiet, watchful, and painfully aware of her outsider status, grew up in the same mansion, yet always on the periphery, a ghost haunting her own life. For years, Madison carried the weight of this secret in silence. Vernon had been explicit. She must never reveal the truth of her birth. He demanded that she play the dutiful ward, grateful for the roof over her head and the education she received. Behind the smiles and formal dinners in the Dupree dining room, Vernon's cold eyes scrutinized her every move, ensuring her compliance. To him, Madison's very existence was a blemish on the family's reputation, an inconvenient reminder of his indiscretion that must be carefully managed. When Madison discovered that her sisters, Nicole and Danny, were embraced by society and lavished with affection, her heart fractured. She overheard their laughter in the hallways outside her bedroom door, felt the sting of exclusion when invitations arrived for balls and debates she wasn't allowed to attend, and watched as her parents fussed over the delicate blemishes on Nicole's birthday cake while barely glancing at her on her own special day. The humiliation settled deep into Madison's bones. She was the other daughter, unwanted and unacknowledged. It was in this turbulent emotional landscape that Madison found solace in Chelsea Hamilton. Chelsea, bold, witty, and unfailingly kind, saw Madison not as an illegitimate child, but as a person of fierce intellect and compassionate heart. Their friendship blossomed into something deeper, into a love that was at once exhilarating and terrifying for Madison. She'd never believed she could be loved in such a way, never dared to hope that someone would treasure her for who she was rather than what she represented. But Vernon, ever vigilant, saw Chelsea as a threat. In his calculating mind, any attachment that Madison formed had to be strictly controlled. He summoned her into his study late one night, the firelight flickering against the polished wooden panels as he delivered his ultimatum: cease this dangerous liaison, or endure the consequences. He spoke of societal scandal, of the ruin that would befall the Dupree name if the truth of Madison's parentage were revealed or if she pursued a relationship with a woman. Most of all, he feared a confrontation with Bill Hamilton, Chelsea's own formidable father in the future. The Hamiltons would never tolerate Vernon's meddling in their daughter's life, nor would they allow their family's reputation to be sullied by his twisted machinations. When Madison challenged him, demanding to know why he had abandoned her and then sought to control her life, Vernon's facade of composure cracked. His hand lashed out and struck her across the cheek, a stinging blow that sent her reeling. The look in his eyes was ice. "Do as I say, child," he hissed, voice low and dangerous, "or you will suffer the full force of my wrath." In that moment, Madison tasted the bitter truth. Her father loved nothing more than the power he wielded, and he would destroy anyone who defied him. Shaken but unbroken, Madison retreated to her room, trembling with a heady mix of fear and defiance. The pain bloomed red on her skin, but her heart burned hotter. She refused to be a pawn in Vernon's sick game any longer. That night, she crafted a plan. She would confront him publicly, expose his cruelty, and take control of her own story. But first, she needed allies. Under the cover of darkness, she sought out Chelsea, corralling her friend into the narrow corridor outside the library. Chelsea, sensing the urgency in Madison's tone and the tremor in her voice, listened as Madison recounted the confrontation, the slap, the threat, the years of hidden shame. Tears sprang to Chelsea's eyes, but her voice was steady as she vowed to stand by Madison, no matter what. They forged a pact to protect one another, deciding that their love would be their shield against Vernon's tyranny. Next came Nicole Dupree Richardson, Madison's half-sister whose life of privilege had shielded her from much of the Dupree family's internal strife. Nicole, poised and graceful, had always regarded Madison with a mixture of sympathy and guilt, but she never understood the full extent of Vernon's cruelty. Madison revealed her lineage to Nicole in a midnight rendezvous in the rose garden behind the manor, the moonlight glinting off the dew-kissed petals. Nicole's eyes widened in shock, then filled with horror at what Madison had endured. Yet, beneath that horror lay a fierce, protective instinct. Nicole promised to use her social standing and her burgeoning career as a journalist to gather evidence of Vernon's misdeeds. Danny Dupree, the youngest of the three, was more difficult to win over. Her loyalty to the Dupree legacy ran deep, and she had internalized the family mythology that painted Madison as the wayward outsider. When confronted with the truth, Danny recoiled first in denial, then in anger. But when Madison shared the photographs of her bruised cheek and Chelsea recounted Vernon's confession of paternity, Danny's facade shattered. She fell into tears, remorseful for the cold distance she had maintained toward Madison. By the time dawn broke, all three sisters were united in purpose: to confront Vernon at the upcoming town council gala, to demand acknowledgement and atonement, and to wrest Madison's life back from the man who had tried to break her spirit. As the night of the gala approached, tension in the Dupree household became palpable. Vernon, alerted by discreet whispers among his confidants, redoubled his efforts to manipulate events. He scheduled a private dinner for Madison, Nicole, and Danny ostensibly to celebrate the sisters' philanthropic work. But the gilded dining room, its crystal chandeliers sparkling like thousands of frozen stars, felt more like a trap than a gesture of familial warmth. Vernon's eyes glinted with malice as he presided over the first course, reciting platitudes about family values and loyalty even as he flicked thinly veiled barbs at Madison's seating place and choice of dress. Madison remained outwardly calm, her fingers clenched around the stem of her wine glass. Chelsea, barred from the event by Vernon's decree, had stationed herself outside, in the shadowed periphery of the manor grounds, ready to step in if things turned violent. Nicole and Danny offered tentative smiles at Madison's side, their solidarity bolstering her resolve. When Vernon finally raised a toast to the Dupree name, Madison stood, her chair scraping sharply against the marble floor. The hall fell silent. All eyes turned to her as she raised her voice to speak, not the polished, deferential voice Vernon expected, but one charged with righteous fury. She spoke of the years of erasure, the whispered slanders that painted her as illegitimate garbage rather than the compassionate, intelligent woman she had proven herself to be. She laid bare Vernon's past crimes, his infidelity, his cruelty, and the violence he had visited upon his only unacknowledged child. Gasps echoed through the hall. Nicole and Danny stood behind Madison, their faces pale but unwavering. Vernon's expression twisted from shock to fury in an instant. He rose, monumental and imposing, to counter her accusations, but his words faltered under the weight of Madison's evidence. The assembled guest-town dignitaries, influential families, and local press watched the family drama unfold as though it were a spectacle. Madison's heart pounded as she saw Vernon's veneer of control cracking. She spoke Chelsea's name, acknowledging the strength that friendship and love had given her. She warned Vernon that if he continued to threaten her or try to dictate her choices whom she loved, how she lived a reckoning would come, one in which the full truth of his actions would be revealed to every corner of the town he'd tried so hard to charm. Before Vernon could respond, Madison turned on her heel and strode out of the hall, her sisters following close behind. The guests murmured, cameras flashed, and Vernon stood frozen, his empire of secrets unraveling with frightening speed. Outside, Chelsea rushed forward, wrapping Madison in a fierce embrace. In that moment of rupture, Madison tasted freedom, freedom from the lies that had bound her, from the fear that had dimmed her spirit, from the man who had tried to own her very identity. Yet she also understood that this confrontation was only the beginning. Vernon, humiliated and enraged in equal measure, would not relent easily. The path ahead would demand courage, cunning, and the unwavering support of those she had turned to for truth and justice. As the night air cooled around them, Madison inhaled deeply, steeling herself for the battles to come. She would no longer be the silent daughter in the wings. She would seize her story, her heritage, and her right to love as fiercely as any champion of justice. And though shadows still clung to every corner of the town she once called home, Madison knew that together with Chelsea, Nicole, and Danny, she could drive them away and claim her place in the light. The manor grounds lay silent under a pale moon as Madison, flanked by Chelsea, Nicole, and Danny, made their way toward the wrought iron gate. The echoes of Vernon's fury still rang in the grand hall behind them, but each sister moved with purpose, united in their decision to wrest control of their lives from the man who had schemed to keep them divided. Chelsea slipped her hand into Madison's, offering a squeeze of steady reassurance. Nicole walked at Madison's other side, her posture uncharacteristically guarded yet resolute. Danny brought up the rear, eyes bright with both guilt and renewed loyalty. Madison breathed deeply, tasting cool night air laden with possibility. Her pulse steadied as she reflected on the bold declaration she had delivered, an unvarnished account of Vernon's cruelty aired before the town's most influential families and the local press. She'd expected him to strike back, but instead of violence, he had met her words with stunned silence, and that silence was itself a victory. It hinted that the rotten foundation of his authority was cracking. Chelsea led the group along the gravel path by the rose garden, past blooming flowers whose sweet scent seemed incongruous with the drama they had just enacted. The three Dupree sisters paused beneath the arched trellis, its roses bathed in ghostly light. Nicole reached out, brushing a petal, her voice hushed. "What now?" Madison turned to face her, resolving to outline the future even as her heart fluttered with uncertainty. "We begin by reclaiming our narrative," she said. "We'll tell our story on our own terms, no more half-truths dictated by Vernon. Danny, your connections in the arts community can help us craft a public exhibit, perhaps a gallery show that uses photographs and testimonies to illuminate our family's hidden history. Nicole, you're a journalist. You can write the feature piece that frames the narrative. Chelsea, your circle of supporters in town and beyond, those who champion justice and equality, will help amplify our message." And Madison closed her eyes, feeling tears threaten. "I'll speak at the council meeting next week, present our demands for legal recognition of my lineage and reparations for everything I've lost." Danny nodded, her earlier hesitation replaced by fierce determination. "I always thought art could change minds," she murmured. "Now I see exactly why." Nicole turned her gaze to the distant manor windows, dark now, shuttered against the scandal unfolding within. "I've already drafted an outline," she said, pulling a small notebook from her coat pocket. "We'll run it in the Gazette. We'll expose Vernon's double life affair, the coercion, even the threats. People need to know the full extent of his manipulation. Chelsea's eyes glowed with pride. And I'll organize a community gathering in the square, she added. We'll invite anyone who's been hurt by powerful families in this region, share stories of injustice, create an open mic. It'll show that Madison's experience isn't unique. She glanced at Madison. Your courage will inspire others. They'll stand with you. Under that arched canopy of roses, the four women forged their pact. They would dismantle Vernon's empire of secrets, piece by piece, until his influence crumbled. But Madison knew that Vernon would not relinquish control without a fight. She steeled herself against the anticipation of his next move, resolved that they would be ready. The following dawn broke with somber gray skies as Madison prepared for the council meeting. The town council chamber, a stately building of limestone columns and stained glass windows, filled quickly with townspeople murmuring in low voices. Posters bearing images of Vernon in his Sunday best were taped over with flyers spotlighting Madison's story. The Hidden Daughter Speaks Wednesday, 10 a.m. Word had spread like wildfire. Inside, Vernon sat at the head of the long mahogany table, flanked by loyal council members whose polite expressions concealed discomfort. He cleared his throat as Madison entered, dressed in charcoal gray tailored suit that balanced authority with understated grace. Chelsea, Nicole, and Danny took seats behind her, joined by a growing crowd of supporters. When it was Madison's turn to speak, the room fell silent. She stepped to the podium, heart pounding, and looked out at faces, some curious, some sympathetic, some skeptical. Yet in that crowd, she recognized allies, past clients of Chelsea's outreach programs, patrons of Danny's gallery, readers of Nicole's articles. She drew a steadying breath and began. Council members, neighbors, friends, she said, her voice clear and resolute. I stand before you as Madison Dupree, daughter of Vernon Dupree, a man who built this town's fortunes yet sought to bury the truth of my birth and control my life at every turn. Today, I demand recognition, legal acknowledgement of my parentage, a public apology for the emotional and physical harm he has inflicted, and reparative measures for the years I spent silenced and erased. She recounted the betrayal, Vernon's affair with a traveling dancer, the forced secrecy, his threats, and the slap that had left her both bruised and unbowed. She described how Nicole and Danny had rallied to her side, how Chelsea's unwavering love had given her the courage to speak. With each detail, Vernon's composure eroded until his face was a mask of fury and regret. When Madison concluded, she presented a petition signed by 100 shopkeepers, teachers, students calling for the council to pass a resolution affirming her rights and condemning Vernon's actions. Murmurs swelled into applause as council members exchanged glances. Finally, the council chair, a dignified woman named Eleanor Hayes, pounded her gavel. By a vote of 6-2, we support Madison Dupree's petition, she declared. Vernon Dupree is hereby required to issue a public statement acknowledging Madison as his daughter and to meet with her to facilitate reconciliation efforts. Further, the council will allocate funds for community healing programs to address the broader impact of such familial abuses. As cheers rose, Madison felt tears of relief spill down her cheeks. Vernon sat in stunned silence, the weight of public censure settling upon him. Chelsea, Nicole, and Danny converged on Madison, enveloping her in a triumphant embrace. The gathering spilled into the courtyard, filled with joyful shouts and the flutter of camera phones capturing the moment. Over the next weeks, Vernon's public apology was read aloud at the town square. He stood stiffly beside Madison as he spoke. I have wronged my daughter in ways I cannot fully atone for. I ask for her forgiveness and vow to support her as her father should. Each word sounded hollow, but Madison accepted the gesture as a step toward closure. She later confided to Chelsea, it's like watching a statue crumble, beautiful yet cold. I may not ever love him as a father, but I can respect the honesty now. In that same square, Danny's exhibit opened to great acclaim, a series of black and white photographs chronicling the lives of women forced into secrecy and isolation, silent witnesses of society's hidden sins. Madison's childhood photos appeared alongside modern portraits of her as she reclaimed her identity. The exhibit's title, Unveiled, echoed through the gallery, a testament to revelations long suppressed. Nicole's feature article, headlined Blood and Betrayal, The Dupree Scandal, ran across 2 full pages of the Gazette. Her incisive prose wove Madison's narrative into the town's broader history of privilege and pain, spotlighting the need for transparency and compassion in every family. Letters to the editor poured in, some praising her bravery, others questioning Vernon's leadership. The conversation rippled outward, prompting discussions at dinner tables and in classrooms. Chelsea organized the community open mic, an event that drew storytellers of every stripe: LGBTQ+ youth, survivors of domestic abuse, the children of immigrant families. Madison took the stage near the end, her voice at first quavering, then growing strong as she thanked everyone for sharing their truths. "Tonight," she said, "we reclaim our stories. We stand not as victims, but as survivors and advocates. We will ensure no child in our town ever feels compelled to live in the shadows." The crowd rose in applause, tears and cheers mingling in the warm night air. Behind the scenes, legal proceedings addressed Madison's formal adoption papers, amended to reflect her true parentage. Custody and inheritance matters followed, as Madison chose a modest settlement not for wealth, but to fund scholarships in her mother's name and support Chelsea's outreach initiatives. She insisted that the money benefit those silenced by power, a legacy of healing rather than bitterness. As winter melted into spring, hometown heroes emerged. Daniel Carter, the high school principal, invited Madison to speak at graduation. Local bookstore owner Sarah Lynn hosted a reading of Madison's memoir excerpts. Farmers market organizer Luis Moreno commissioned a mural depicting the 4 sisters standing together, roses entwined around their feet. Everywhere Madison looked, the seeds of her courage bloomed in the hearts of others. Vernon, once feared and revered, found himself increasingly isolated. Some council members distanced themselves, a few old friends refused his calls. Rumors circulated that he was considering retreating overseas, perhaps to invest in distant ventures where his reputation remained untarnished. But Madison, ever compassionate, proposed a different path: restorative justice talks between Vernon and the dance community where her mother had performed, acknowledging the art form that had once given birth to her life and been erased by his secrecy. Surprisingly, Vernon agreed. In a small studio lit by string lights, surrounded by dancers and their children, he stood before the woman whose name history had forgotten. She was older now, her body marked by time, yet her eyes still held that spark of life. Vernon offered a genuine apology to her and to the community. He presented a check to fund scholarships for young dancers and pledged his support to preserve the studio. For Madison, witnessing her father's contrition in that space felt like closing a circle, transforming the site of a past betrayal into one of creative possibility. In the months that followed, as summer warmed the town's red brick streets, Madison's life settled into a cadence of purpose and connection. She and Chelsea moved into a charming cottage near the riverbank, where Chelsea opened a small cafe and Madison established a nonprofit for at-risk youth. Nicole launched a quarterly magazine dedicated to social justice, and Danny curated a rotating art space that showcased marginalized voices. The 4 women remained inseparable, bound by shared history and a collective vision, to build a community where secrets had no power and every voice could rise. One evening, Madison sat on the back porch of the cottage, sipping tea as fireflies danced in the twilight. Chelsea joined her, draping an arm around her shoulders. "We did it," Madison whispered, her gaze drifting over the garden where wild roses intertwined with honeyed jasmine. "We took back our story." Chelsea pressed her cheek to Madison's. "Your bravery changed everything," she replied. "For you, for me, for everyone who needed to see that even the darkest secrets can be brought into the light." Madison nodded, a serene smile blooming on her lips. In that quiet moment, she felt the culmination of her journey, not merely freedom from her father's tyranny, but the discovery of her own strength and the beauty of chosen family. Anywhere the future led, she would walk forward with her sisters and her love by her side, guardians of their collective truth and stewards of a brighter tomorrow.